Welcome to Wireless Week Live, where we offer a forum for in-depth discussion on some of the hottest topics in wireless. On today's call, I'm lucky to have a really amazing group of panelists. I think they can offer some real insight on the state of evolved multimedia broadcast multicast service, which is a mouthful, but it's also known as LTE Multicast. I'd like to welcome Anders Svensson, head of 4G Solutions for Ericsson, Cedric Fernandes, CTO for MobiTV, and Rick Fung, Business Development Manager for Anritsu. Gentlemen, welcome. So during today's call, I want to get to a number of aspects of LTE Multicast and take a look at where operators are in rolling out this technology, but also how they're ensuring that things run smoothly once it's up and running. We'll also touch on practical applications of multicast and get a general overview of how operators view the management of video on their networks. Anders, I think maybe we can start with you. And why don't we start off with, does Ericsson have a sense of how much traffic video is getting? And then can you give our audience a little overview of how multicast differs from the current paradigm for delivering video over mobile?
So, yeah, I guess I can, thanks for having me here. So, Ericsson is doing a lot of research in order to understand what the traffic is going on the networks globally. And what we have seen is that, yeah, we will have a significant growth for the on smartphones. We have seen a significant growth of smartphone, and today we have roughly 300 million smartphones in the North American market, for example. But we see that that will continue to increase the next couple of years, maybe up to 50% of the smartphones during the next years. We also see that the behavior of the users when they are buying smartphone over time are starting using more and more video. And that generates more and more traffic into the networks, and that will continue going on for the next couple of years. We have seen, for example, when we have done surveys that we have smartphone users that are up all the way up to 40% of the users once a week are doing some type of streaming video on the smartphone, which will then continue to increase over time going forward as well. We have also seen when we did comparison between 2012 and 2014 that there is a tendency to moving outside of the house when you're watching video, which also will drive the need for more availability of video over a mobile network rather than in the home network where you watch on TV and so on. So if we summarize that, there will be a big need for having efficient way of delivering video over the mobile network going forward, and broadcast, LTE broadcast, could be one of the solutions in order to achieve that.
Right. So can you give me a little bit of just sort of what this point to multi-point model for multicast? Can you talk a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, so if you look at it from a mobile network, you have two options now with LTE broadcast coming in to the system, and that is that you can have either a delivery mechanism where you do today with unicast, where every user have their own channel when they are watching the video, while with broadcast or multicast you will be able to then share the same channel with multiple users. However, that will be a little bit depending on what the content that you're looking at. So there will be an applicability for how to watch your content based on how many other users are using it at the same time. However, we have seen that in the studies that we have done is that there is still a lot of interest in looking on live video and also TV, general linear TV, as well as complement that with more individual watching of shows, similar to what other, where you distribute the content more individual to individual users. So there will be a combination of this, but there will be a significant piece of efficiency that you can get with LTE broadcast for the more common channels that people want to look.
Okay. Rick, let's turn it over to you. Do you have a sense for where the carriers are with this technology and sort of how far out we are from a scenario where end users expect this kind of content, say at a stadium tailgate or wherever that just happens to be one of the big use cases that's been Verizon has pitched?
Right, right. Today, there's, I think, the latest count is about 19 carriers worldwide that have already announced trials or about to deploy the service. So if you look at that, out of the 260 or so LTE operators, that's about 10% of the operators that are already looking at trialing the service. No operator yet have actually commercialized this widely yet. I think the first one was KT in South Korea. They actually announced at the beginning of this year, and they have a commercial device that supports this. Other operators in Europe and North America and Asia are in different stages of trialing right now. So I think we're really on the cusp of having this service being commercially available. So I think 2015 is the year where EMS service will be commercialized in select areas at first, and then become widely deployed. Keep in mind, it does require new devices because it requires a new chipset. So that uptake rate will really depend on how quickly people upgrade their devices to support EMS.
Right.
Cedric, MobiTV is in the business of delivering video across devices. How does multicast figure into the evolution of your solutions?
So, we think it's a good option. Clearly, we've been in the mobile space for a number of years. MobiTV has been one of the premier providers of premium services on mobile, and more recently across all different screens, including set-top boxes, etc. So we've seen a broad spectrum of usage across all of these different devices. Now, when you look at how video has progressed through the years, Anders is right. I mean, there's a huge explosion in terms of video consumption on mobile networks. It's gone up significantly, not just with the advent of smartphones from Apple and Android from Google, but also with the advent of tablets. And I think tablets are also driving a lot of usage, whether it's over Wi-Fi or mobile carrier networks. Now, we've, to a large degree, always delivered video over unicast. And it's worked well and continues to work well for the large spectrum of use cases we support. There are certain use cases where I think a technology like eMBMS or LTE Multicast, like some of us like to call it, is very relevant. You look at special events, you look at sporting events, you look at coverage around stadiums. Anything that requires high throughput but has critical mass associated with it, I think could benefit from a technology like LTE Multicast.
And Cedric, so what kinds of requests are you getting from your carrier customers? I know you touched on a little bit, but is this just another seen as just another offering, or is this a true across-the-board evolution of mobile video?
So I think there are a lot of operators that are genuinely interested in the technology and using this as a way to streamline delivery of live events. And I'm specifically calling out live events. I think there are operators that are looking at it from the standpoint of general delivery of linear TV, if you will. I think there are challenges with that particular use case, but definitely for live events, sporting events in particular, a lot of operators are interested in that particular use case and using eMBMS for delivery of sporting events.
Can you talk just briefly, what, if you have any idea, sort of what the end user experience will be like in that case? Say at a stadium.
MobiTV, when we look at it more from the consumer standpoint. And what's the consumer's perspective of the video they're consuming? For me, eMBMS is just another delivery technology. And as a consumer, really, I shouldn't be bothered about whether I'm getting video through eMBMS or I'm getting it through unicast, RTSP, RTP feeds, or HTTP over unicast. To me, as a consumer, it should not matter. And so where we're focused, MobiTV as a company, is it's on creating those types of seamless experiences for the consumers who use our services. A great example would be when you look at LTE Multicast, today, at least from what we've seen with the trials we've been involved with, etc., those feeds are not necessarily available nationally, right? I think at some stage you'll see operators actually distribute, let's say, a live sporting event across all of their cell sites, all of their cell towers, all of their cell sectors, in which case it's ubiquitous and everybody gets access to the same feed. But in the interim, you're going to be dealing with situations where people are mobile with their phones. They get handed off from one cell sector to another cell sector, if you will. What happens to that broadcast feed when you have a consumer in that situation? There's got to be a handoff between multicast and unicast, and it's got to be seamless. So when we look at it from those perspectives and try to make sure that we've got those particular use cases implemented. So it's totally seamless to the end user.
Anders or Rick, I want to get any response to what Cedric had to say.
From an end user perspective, when it comes to video for LTE broadcast, I think it should be seamless. It should be something that the operator is doing as a tool for making more efficient delivery. And to Cedric's point is that the most obvious place where you have a lot of concentration of users that are interested in the same content is, major events or live streaming of sports events in certain areas and so on. And over time, there will be more content that are filling up are according to that schema, which means that there could be other opportunities over time that makes it valuable to use it multicast rather than unicast. But the most obvious initial will be content that is local for a specific event where you have a big interest in.
Sure. Rick, anything to add?
We've seen the stats that in 2014, video content is already about 50% of the total content. And that's only projected to grow to 60% and even 50% by 2016. But if you look at it from an operator's perspective, it really uses a lot of resources to deliver that content. And so the sporting events, for example, where really the same content is going out to multiple users, it really makes sense to use a multicast broadcast service, a unicast. And so the operators are the ones that really benefit from this because it alleviates some of the spectrum that's going to do unicast. But at the same time, it does provide much better end-user experience because it's able to maintain the quality of service by delivering the video on multiple streams of video even over eMBMS. So it benefits both the operator and the end user.
Rick, can you talk a little bit about the technical challenges of deploying multicast and what Anritsu does to help operators ensure things go smoothly?
Sure, yes. So as I mentioned, eMBMS requires new chipsets, so that means the operators really have to introduce the new models and handset into the network. But it really impacts all components of the network, the end user devices themselves, in terms of the hardware, but also in terms of the software that needs to be integrated and tested in device. There is the radio access network that has to be upgraded to support the new service. There's actually system information blocks, system blocks that have to be actually defined to be used for eMBMS, and those have to be tested at the radio layer. There's actually also a protocol layer, the IP layer that has to be tested in order to deliver service from the core network servers to end user device. And then finally, there's the core network servers themselves, the eMBMS gateway, the content delivery gateway. That all those components have to work together to deliver the service. And as far as testing, there are a lot of moving pieces, right? Different vendors, different interoperability. And so there's testing in terms of the chipset level. There's that chipset companies have to develop and make sure the chipsets are compliant and also working as intended. There is integration testing by the device side, and that's really key in terms of making it available to interoperate across different vendors of middleware and server. And then finally, by the carriers, they have to maintain a certain level of quality of service, so they have their acceptance performance testing. And so what Anritsu, what we offer today is really test solutions that address all three segments. For the chipset segment, we actually have a protocol test solution that allows chipset vendors develop test cases that are really stressing how the protocol works. Not only how it works in terms of as defined by 3GPP, but how it works in case when there are error or test scenarios to really thoroughly test the technology. Can we offer a solution for device manufacturers, the UE manufacturers, to test the device not only on how it connects to service, but also how well that service is delivering content to the end users. And then finally, we have components and carrier acceptance test solutions that are already available today. So you might have seen the press release. We actually have announced GCF compliant test solutions, and we also have carrier acceptance solutions for eMBMS that are available today. And so there are a lot of pieces that need to be tested, but Anritsu already have solutions we offer today, and we continue to deploy that in multiple bands as they're introduced, and also working across different devices, different chipsets, and even different middleware solutions to become available.
All right. anyone can jump in here on this question. Any idea how far behind the device market? I know, Rick, you touched on this, but how far behind the device market is as far as supporting multicast? I know Verizon offers maybe two, but I know of one. I think it's the Galaxy S3 that supports. It's got a Qualcomm chip and it supports multicast. Any thoughts on where we are there?
Yeah, I think because it does require new chipset, new devices, there's going to be a churn that has to be introduced, but it really depends on the user demand when they want to upgrade their phones to support this new service. And at the same time, operators also have to have the network themselves provide the service. And it's really a complex technology to test. I mean, we sometimes forget how difficult it is to even do LTE Unicast, and now we're doing multicast broadcast across many base stations at the same time. It has to be time synchronized. The delivery has to be time synchronized, and also all the negative scenarios. For example, what happens when you hand over from multicast to unicast, or hand back as a user moves between the cells. All those scenarios have to be tested, and how far are we in terms of having that? I mean, we can, I guess, look at what the trials are going on today. We recently with the trial by in France by Orange to broadcast or at least multicast the French Open tennis tournament, the volleyball event in Poland, and in the IndyCar event in the US here. So there's a lot of trials, but that really speaks to the fact that it's a complex technology, and it really takes many steps in order to roll out that service. But I think we're really at the point where the network is ready, the radio network is ready, the phone network component is ready, and it's really a matter of bringing a device to the market and commercializing it once all the pieces have been tested and verified.
Just adding to what Rick said, at MobiTV we've had the opportunity to work on a number of trials in the MVMS space, and that's included us working with multiple OEMs in the space. As you know, we did the Super Bowl with Verizon last year, and we're doing a few internationally as well. And so I think the devices will come. There's quite a few OEMs out there that are working on it. Like Rick said, I think it boils down to it's really supply and demand, right? And as these get deployed, you'll see more devices in the market fairly quickly, I think. The cost of those devices will go down over time as well. So I don't think devices necessarily are a big bottleneck to eMBMS deployment. I do believe that, on the technology front, in terms of challenges operators may have, there are a few things that still need to be resolved. I think one I had mentioned in terms of this handoff between broadcast and unicast, there's also the question of spectrum. For eMBMS to work, you've actually got to allocate spectrum to the broadcast. And if you don't have critical mass and you've allocated spectrum, then one has to beg the question, is it really efficient? And so I think you also have an opportunity and really a need from the operator's perspective to be able to allocate that spectrum dynamically on the fly, if you will, at some stage for this thing to really be commercially viable, in my opinion. But again, on the devices front, I think those devices will come quickly once the demand's actually there.
Yeah, and I agree on that as well. And in order for us to fly, because most of the use cases, especially for video, you want to attract the majority of your subscriber base, which means that you will need to also have all smartphones, even the lower priced, to have the capability in order to be able to address it. Otherwise, you get limited gain of having, because the purpose is that you should be able to broadcast to many. If you only have half of your subscriber base having the capability, then you still need to do unicast for the service. So then you don't get the gains in the network that you have.
Yeah. Anders, as Ericsson looks at this, are there any standards, being pushed on this, or interoperability? I know it's part of the LTE Advanced, but does this? I'm clueless on this, but is there any, as far as video working on it, being pushed and then working on any carrier, or is it going to be content that's pushed, carrier by carrier to their subscribers? Like, if I'm an AT&T subscriber, I likely couldn't pick up on the Verizon Super Bowl multicast, right? Is that how that works, or?
Yeah, technically you are limited to the network where you are. Naturally, the content could be distributed on both, but that's more of a commercial agreements that will be done with the operator on which content they can provide. But if you are with one operator, you cannot take the broadcast signal from another operator. That's not how the technology works. And you will simultaneously in your phone actually have unicast going on. So you might watch video at the same time do Facebook or something like that. And the Facebook will leveraging a unicast schema in order to do connections while you are watching the video coming down on your smartphone in broadcast. And as it's using the same radios in parallel, you cannot really change to another carrier.
Sure. I guess that sort of segues into my next question, which is, and feel free anybody to comment on this, but you know, does anybody have a feel for what the business model is going to be as far as how carriers will pitch content, how they're going to create deals with content creators? It seems like that's sort of the missing piece here. The technology's coming together, but what's the business model around this?
But you know, really, when you look at content rights and acquiring content rights, it's not necessarily very different from an eMBMS standpoint, right? Really, when you look at content, it's about what content can you acquire at what price and for which screens and networks. Right, and you know, mobile content rights are different from mobile and tablet rights, and those are different from in-home delivery rights. Let's say we have cable, IPTV, or through some OTT service. Those are just, I think, standard conversations. I wouldn't expect it to be too different from an eMBMS standpoint, because again, eMBMS it's another delivery channel. Whether you're doing multicast, unicast, I think doesn't matter too much, so long as you're really protecting the content. You know, so things that will come into play are things like digital rights management and conditional access systems and level 1 security versus not, for example, on the content rights front. At the end of the day, any technology you deliver has got to have consumer benefit. And so when you look at business models that operators might look to deploy as part of this, it's got to benefit the consumer. And if the proposition going in is that, you know, this is better for the network in general, which means you're using less data on the network, then at some level that's got to translate to benefits for the consumer. Either via lower data overage charges, via lower data plans, or via zero rating of content that's delivered over eMBMS. You know, so I'd expect some shape or form of, you know, those types of business models being employed.
Do you see the carriers? I mean, Rick, maybe you can touch on this. Do you see the carriers promoting multicast as a feature that, you know, consumers are going to want? Like, you know, there's the idea, like, would a consumer say buy a multicast capable phone for extra money versus one that doesn't have the features? Is it going to be that kind of feature, or is it going to kind of be in the background and the carriers plan to make money around the content that's served over it?
I think it's actually more of the former. It's just a mechanism for a lot of operators to differentiate themselves. So, for example, if you look at what Verizon's doing and sponsoring in terms of the IndyCar, it's tying the two together. So Verizon can then also offer this as a subscription service, where a subscriber can acquire a new device and have the same service. And then they can then watch this stream, this delivery, this content that is not available on other networks. So even though you may have a device, the same device on the AT&T network, Verizon network, Verizon may offer a service that AT&T doesn't. Or similarly, AT&T may offer a game that's not available on the Verizon network. The content delivery really depends on what the operators want to select. But I do see a business model where there's revenue sharing. So the network operators provide the service in content such as ESPN or NASCAR or the French Open, work with the operator to offer that service, and in return the operator then get a portion of that revenue from the subscription of service. Also offer it as a pay-per-view on a subscriber basis, where the operator would charge each individual subscriber an optional fee on top of the monthly fee to have eMBMS service, because it does deliver much higher quality content than you could if you were just doing unicast. Unicast, you know, the QoS there's much more fluctuation in terms of QoS level, whereas the eMBMS can deliver content at the moment you need it, especially in very dense environment like a sporting event, and offers a much higher video quality than unicast. So I do see a revenue sharing model between the operators and the content providers, and I see that the end user would actually see a benefit of this to the point where they would actually pay money to subscribe to such service.
Sure. Anybody else have anything to add there?
I do expect the operators to push EMBMS from a marketing standpoint, and it's really about service differentiation. I think if you look at the wireless operator space over the last few years, back in the day, they had the opportunity to differentiate themselves, not just on network and voice services and messaging services, but also on devices they brought to market and applications they brought to market. That ecosystem's changed significantly, right? You've got, almost every operator has effectively the same device, whether it's an iPhone or an Android device, with very little opportunity to differentiate from a devices standpoint. Apps are pretty much the same now across every operator globally, frankly. And so operators need to find opportunities to differentiate themselves, and EMBMS provides that opportunity, because now you might get a specific device on one operator, not on another. You could use that to beef up your offering, and you've got network technology that potentially others don't have. And to Rick's point, if they've got the right relationships, then you've got content that the other guys don't have. And so, yeah, I fully expect them to actually use this as a marketing opportunity to upsell their services versus other operators.
I know we're really focused on video, but I've heard that multicast will be used to deliver other types of content to end users. Can somebody touch on that?
I think the opportunity is there from a technology standpoint. The tech definitely supports it. This doesn't need to be about video per se, and not necessarily live video per se either. You could do file delivery over EMBMS, but then for me it goes back to the utilization. When you're doing file delivery, are you actually delivering files that people are going to consume? And so you've got to have way more intelligence in the system to be able to predict what people want to use if you're going to push content down to people. If not, you're just pushing content down and wasting your network. And so you've got to, that's a balancing act, in my opinion. I think you've got to be able to balance that out. If you've got the right intelligence and you're pushing content to people that are consuming it, by all means, I think there's value there. But when we look at it again, I'll flip back to video for a minute. If you take live out of the equation, and this implies, this works even for live to a certain degree. But when you look at video consumption in general, it's personalized consumption today. People want to consume content whenever they want to, whichever device they want to, and it's all based on personalized preferences. In general, that goes against the concept of broadcast, because broadcast is everybody's watching the same content at the same time. So when you look at it from a file delivery perspective, I question whether you're going to get critical mass for pushing, let's say, on-demand movies or TV shows down to users, and whether they're all going to watch that content at the same time. Not necessarily the same time, because you'll have download, but do they all want to watch the same content?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I can add to that as well, and we have ongoing discussions naturally on this with operators, but I think that there is a way to go before they can figure out what is the business cases around it and what is the benefits for the different configurations that they will have, just like Cedric said. And the piece that might be going on is that also you could have a differentiating broadcast for certain type of files where you are maybe personalize it, what actually you store on the devices. But the question is how personalized it is versus what is the kind of common information that you want to see. One other aspect is we have seen more of discussions around maybe software download, which means that you do the updates over the air, which is a common software that is used by many. We also see machine-to-machine applications where you have more of a scheduled or more of a predictable behavior where you can have the same content going to many devices, and that would then give the benefits that is needed in order to reap the benefits of broadcast.
Right. Rick, anything to add there?
Yeah, I really agree with what Andrew said. So content delivery, not just for video, but also for firmware. As devices get more complex, firmware updates tend to be much larger files. They're on the order of 100 megs. And if you look at a large operator that has 100 million subscribers, that's a lot of content to push over the air. And we're doing a unicast, even off-peak hours, it's a lot of network resources tied up. Whereas if we're using eMBMS to deliver that same software update, it's much more efficient. Right? You can actually send the same content. And eMBMS actually has a facility to download and even do error corrections and retransmissions. So not only for video content, but also for file content that are very error sensitive. So there's a facility to support that. But there's also an opportunity to deliver content like weather information or stock information, or in the event of emergency, you can actually broadcast, for example, a live news broadcast to all devices in an area. Instead of someone just receiving a simple CMAS message, they can actually get live content of whatever the emergency event is. So there's actually opportunity to deliver many types of content in addition to video.
All right, I think that's about all the time we have today. I'd like to thank Anders, Cedric, and Rick for joining us today, as well as everyone that tuned in. Stay tuned for more episodes of Wireless Week Live in the near future, and we'll see you again soon.